And yeah, like none of that storyline needed to be Discworld. I can't think of anything in the game other than the fact that other than death and the fact that death was at one of the murders. So that what let us trick him into giving us details on one of the murders. That's the only thing that I can really say. Okay, that is a mechanic related to, or that is a part of the story that could not happen if this was not Discworld. Anything else? I can't think of anything else in this game that was like that had to be Discworld. And yeah, it was a spin off. They were clearly using the Discworld name to generate their own brand. Was this even made by the same company? This was a completely different company because the first ones were Psygnosis. They did get Rob Brydon back though. GT Interactive. GT Interactive is part of Atari. They were bought out by Infogrames in 1999. When was Discworld Noir released? Discworld Noir is 1999, so that was either before or after Infogrames. But oh, this became Infogrames. Suddenly, this explains so much. GT Interactive Software Games. Let's have a look at this. So yeah, Discworld Noir is on here. And this was made by... Oh, it was still made by Perfect... So it was still developed by the same people, Perfect Entertainment. It was just published by a different company. Because it was published by Psygnosis, the first two, which was based in Liverpool, and shut down not too long ago because they were in charge of the Wipeout series. But Perfect Entertainment was the big one, and they ceased production in 1999. It was probably one of their last games. Maybe it was their last game. Oh no, yeah, it was their last game as Perfect Entertainment. That's kind of sad. And then yeah, it looks like they had a bunch of stuff unpublished and cancelled. And then they released it on PlayStation after. And the PlayStation ports, I don't know how much of it is support and how much is the emulator. The PlayStation port didn't feel great. So I think definitely try and play this on PC if you can, but it is very, very difficult to set up on PC and actually get running. I think you pretty much have to do it in a VM, in a Windows 95 VM or something, because it's not survived the test of time, let's say. And I think EPSXE it's not designed to run it. It's not a game that they've prioritized making work. So let's have a look. Discworld Noir. Let's see if there's any information on here. Let's see if we can get any information on like its creation because it's interesting. Maltese Falcon, Casablanca. Pratchett was consulted on the story and provided some dialogue, being credited for causing far too much interference. I mean, that is just a staple of the Discworld games because in Discworld 2, he's credited as throwing rocks from afar. So I wouldn't read too much into that. What else do we have? Threaded structure. In one case, missing a clue early on in the game will cause the characters to give it to the player later. That's a bit of a weird thing to include on the wiki page, but okay. Alright, what can we find about this development? So, Perfect Entertainment enjoyed a working relationship with Terry Pratchett and the Discworld license from as early as 93, collaborating closely to develop their first two Discworld games, which were really good. Discworld Noir was developed for Windows 95 and 98. GT Interactive was chosen due to their strong US presence, so they were trying to break into the US market, which the first two games didn't really get, and that's probably why the sudden shift of theme, and probably why Discworld mechanics weren't inherently part of the story. That line there, because the Discworld is not massively known in the US. Very niche. The first two Discworld games have done relatively poor in America. Yeah, they weren't targeted at the US market in the slightest. And I think this game kind of suffered from that, from being targeted at the US. Chris Bateman, who'd worked on Discworld 2 and Non-League Ball, originally suggested using Tepic as the lead character. But Pratchett disliked the idea. Pratchett sent the developers a story outline, drafted the first script, wanting a detective story set in Bankmore Park. So it was Pratchett that came up with the idea of the of like the private investigator theme, which is interesting. The idea for a film noir theme came from the developers. Bateman wrote the ultimate script, which was then edited by Pratchett. The script was the first one Bateman ever received for a video game. With each Discworld game, Pratchett became less and less involved in noir, being involved in the beginning and end of development. That's fair. So yeah, they basically was like, okay, let's make a Discworld game for America and involve the author less. I mean, that's not a great recipe. Game uses pre-rendered 3D models. Real-time 3D models were infeasible as the developers needed the characters to have facial expressions, and likely few people would have had computers powerful enough to run the game. A full 3D game would require simplification of the characters. Utilizing some 3D allowed them to explore more with shadow and fog. There was loads of fog. The backgrounds of the game remained 2D. So yeah, voice acting was so 4 people doing the voice acting. So we had Rob Brydon, who they got from Rob Brydon, Kate Robbins, and Nigel Planer. Oh, Rob Brydon and Kate Robbins were in both 1 and 2. Nigel Planer was in 2. Robert Llewellyn's new. Yeah, like Discworld humor just doesn't work in America. It's got to be said. There was 1 less voice actor in Noir than Discworld 2. Was there? Discworld 2 had Rob Brydon, Kate Robbins, Nigel Planer, and who's the other one? Discworld 2. Nigel Planer and Eric Idle. But okay, so hold on. Eric Idle reprised Rose Discworld. As Rincewind. Tony Robinson didn't return. John Pertwee died before production would begin. Rob Brydon, Kate Robbins, and Nigel Planer. No, there's 4. There's not 1 less voice actor. There's the same number of voice actors. Wasn't there? Well, whatever. The heavy amount of dialogue in the game led to more reuse of voice actors in comparison. Well, led to more reuse of voice actors in comparison. I'd kind of disagree with that statement. The heavy amount of dialogue led to more reuse of Rob Brydon in comparison. Almost every character was Rob Brydon. In terms of like Kate Robbins, still the female characters, yeah. Robert Llewellyn and Nigel Planer, there were like so few characters that they actually voiced. Other director Overlord, Pride Voices. Robbins, voice actor for a female character in the game, finished her lines in a 1-day session. Brydon, who voiced the player character, took a grueling week to complete his lines, with the game's main delivery of important information being Luton's hard-boiled monologues. So he did Luton and he did all the characters that he voices in a week. That's insane. Because like, how many characters are in there? Rob Brydon plays almost all of them. Hallway creates the soundtrack, we're studying most of the Noir films. After the release of Discworld Noir, Perfect Entertainment folded, leaving them unable to patch the game. It shows. Boy, does it show. Because they did patch... Like, Discworld 1's first release, the original version is not great. The director's cut is much better. So it seems like they were one of the first companies, or one of the early gaming companies to like just do the patch cycle. I think they distributed patches as well to customers if they requested them. Like they could upgrade their original to director's cut. I think they like sent out floppy disks if they requested them. I remember reading that on Lspace, wiki. I think. Company briefly researched as Teeny Weeny Games. Under this name, the game was ported to the PlayStation. PlayStation version has a lower resolution in order to fit the game onto 1 disc, because on PC it's 3. Wow, 3 discs. Wow. Compress the game sounds and video. So they actually, Discworld 2 is 2 discs. So they literally went 1 disc, 2 disc, 3 disc on the PC versions. Well, how far could they have got? A port for Dreamcast was developed, but oh, that's interesting. One of those unfinished projects. As a result of the closure of GT Interactive, the game was never released outside of Europe. Oh boy. Oh, that is the ultimate kick, right? You pick a publisher specifically because of their strong US presence. You tone down the Discworld mechanics purely to appeal more to an American audience. And then it never gets released outside of Europe. That is the kick. That is a kick in the teeth. Oh, that is so unfortunate. I mean, I don't necessarily think it would have been a big success outside of the UK. Because like, while it didn't rely on Discworld mechanics, I feel like people would have just seen it and gone, "Oh, Discworld, yeah, okay, I don't know what this is." It's this huge franchise of like I don't know how many books have been released at the time, but now 41 books. There's no way I'm gonna have the information to get into this, which I think happens with things like this. This one I received generally positive reviews on its release. Marek Bronsting rated Noir 4 out of 5 stars. So it got good reviews. A minus, 74%. C plus. Yeah, that's fair enough. Game's atmosphere was praised. Praised the graphics and music for their part in creating the atmosphere. And for the time, it was a very unique style, I think. Point-click adventures were at the time very cartoony. I mean, look at all the LucasArts stuff from that back then. Look at like Blazing Dragons. Look at the first two Discworld games. They all had a very, very similar style to them. So I think, like, yeah, going for something with originality was definitely an interesting move. And but that does come with the jank of being the first to do that kind of setting in a point-and-click adventure game, and that clearly that kind of showed a little bit. Notice the shadows, lighting, and fogs, perfect companions to an excellent soundtrack. Dark and seedy atmosphere, enticing visuals, cool soundtrack. Oh, criticize the broken record skipping effect that seems to get worse as the game goes on. So, maybe that wasn't just the emulation. Maybe that was actually a thing. Oh, when did Grim Fandango come out? Grim Fandango, I think, was 97? 98. Dang. I had to make a pun. So just after Grim Fandango, yeah. I've actually not played Grim Fandango. I only know it through reputation. What's the style of that? Kind of like cartoony crossed with a bit more of a crime type. Oh yeah, that's very noir. Be interesting to see how much of the how much of it was kind of like inspired by that. I'm going to use the word inspired very loosely. I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily know if the whole game is noir, but that looks very noir. Oops. Distinctive art and thematic style. Yeah, they probably have a lot more resources than Perfect Entertainment did, though. The music and atmosphere was likewise praised by Houston, reviewing the French translation of the game. Effective use of rain and its cinematic quality. I think the rain was actually toned down massively for the PS version because you get it in the cutscenes, but you don't get it in the actual scenes themselves. Criticized the scarcity of music and sound effects. Said what music there was brought a semblance of atmosphere. Large amounts of dialogue was criticized. Dialogue is generally interesting enough, but sometimes felt it could be a bit too much. Lengthy conversations were one of the reasons they got downgraded to a C. Yeah. Like, and it felt like towards the end of the game, they had more story than they had ideas for gameplay. Because really, like, for a point-and-click adventure game, you've got an inventory, and you've got the notebook system. The notebook system, I think, is quite interesting. But it does lead you into a trap. And I think it led them into a trap as well of all game progress, like 90. Okay, I say all game progress, 95%, probably maybe a bit higher, maybe 95%. I'm gonna pluck out the air of game progress was just talk to someone about a certain thing. Like show them a certain thing from your inventory, or show them a certain thing in a notebook. You get something else in the notebook that you just have to show to someone else. Then you have to show that to someone else. They have to show that to someone else. Um, and when it required you to not do that, like when it required you to use something from the notebook, like the Monday hang upside down with the note on the wall, it's just a bit weird and out of place, and you don't really expect to have to do it. And that's one of the things that I think, I certainly know tripped me up. I don't know if would trip other people up. And it's very easy, and I think in generally in point and click adventure games, it's very easy to not focus on the object puzzles and to focus a bit too much on the story um and the conversational progress. And I think this was weighted a bit too far that way for my liking. Again, that might be your motive may vary on that one. While Goose fellow developers try too hard to make every character, every situation funny. Yeah, fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's always going to happen. Like, resulting in jokes that fell flat in a level of humor only sporadically maintained. That's always going to happen. Different people find different things funny. Sure, whatever. Frosty called James generally amusing, but it felt very tiresome times when it lasted too long. The dialogue is suitably authentic and funny. And that's slightly irritating. I know it's funny way that Pratchett writes. Yeah, it did. There were times when the writing felt very Pratchett. I'm glad that he had at least some editing over the script, but yeah, it just didn't necessarily need to be Discworld. Davis criticized the game for not letting much Pratchett's humor. I can see both sides there because it depends on which part of the game you're talking about. Roosevelt's voice found sound artificial, placing the blame on either poor editing of the various sound sources or a lack of variety in the full voice actors. Oh, there we go. I mean, yeah, like when you got voice actors that are just the same, trying to play off each other with the same voice, just with a slightly different accent, that's what you're gonna get. The first two games masked it a lot better. They masked it a lot better because while I make fun in my speedrun of Discworld, of like, oh, there's loads of conversations where Rob Brydon's just talking to Rob Brydon. There's not actually loads of those. There's a few. Um, but when you get Rob Brydon to voice 80% of the characters, yeah, they were more comedy actors. They can be silly. This was Rob Brydon doing like 50 different serious voices. Exactly. I think that's totally right. And it yeah. I don't know how much of it was the emulation because obviously the voice lines were not ending at the right time. You know, one example at the end when Carlos was like, "You, me." So I don't know if that's probably emulation stuff. I'm not going to judge the game on that or anything like that. But it throughout the game, it didn't feel like it was two actors talking at each other. It just felt like two actors talking individually and then the lines being mixed together, which it is a kind of it's very common in voice acting for the time, I think. Barkov praised voice acting, felt like every line came across convincingly. No, I can't agree. Good to find the British attempts to imitate foreign accents funny. Oh, okay, that's a no. Two Conker's accent definitely not okay. But we definitely won't be dwelling on that bit. I'm liking going through the wiki after it, like, especially with context of like just having played the game. That's pretty cool. Oh, there's Rob Brydon, Kate Robbins, Robert Llewellyn, Nigel Planer. Yeah, that's kind of not okay. In a retrospective review in 2002, Bronstein maintained his original rating for 4 and 5 stars. 2011 review by Eurogamer's John Walker called it surprisingly poorly structured. Noted lack of puzzles. Agree with that. That's pretty much what I was saying. Where there's no object based puzzles. Everything is conversational. It's just such a different style. I knew you'd call me out on that. I knew you'd call me out on that. Eurogamer. Walker still misses advantage for the game, however, comparing it favorably to the company's first two Discworld adventures, noting a lack of grating knowing tweeness. A lack of grating knowing tweeness. What's a what's a tweenus? Anyway. What companies sponsor game? Comparing it favorably to the company's first two Discworld games, noting a lack of grating knowing between. I can't see if they're laughing. And an ability to be genuinely funny, like the phrase "grating knowing between us." Okay, I'm dead. The quality of being twee. Okay. Okay. Grating knowing tweeners. So not not knowingly artificially attractive. So they lent into the fact that it wasn't perfect. Like they didn't take themselves seriously. Is that what that phrase means? Like they don't take themselves too seriously? Excessive or effectively quaint. So I cannot pass this phrase. I just cannot pass this phrase. Where is this? What's the source on this? Number 6. Uh, archive from the original. We need to see this in context. Grating. It's not even in the. Oh, go. Tweenus. Tweenus. 3 years later, again, Discworld Noir from the same developers. The fortunate developer has a sense to keep the backgrounds 2D, but more than that, gone was the cartoony tweenus. And in was a noir style. So okay, they're just using it to refer to um the theming, I guess. I don't know. I just find that phrase like the most like self-aggrandizing weird phrase. A lack of grating knowing tweenus. All right, moving on. In 2011, adventure games would go on to place at number 27 in their top 100 all-time adventure games list. Oh, we should work our way through that. We should go through like all the bests. Giving credit to its innovative notepad mechanism, which became a common element in adventure games. Oh, this was like one of the first ones that did really a notepad system. I can think of a few others, like the Cluedo like adventure game definitely had the same mechanic, which I think was a different company. That wasn't Perfect Entertainment, was it? I don't know. Just have my bookmarks real quick. Walker Place listed at number 20 in their best 25 adventure games ever made. It seems to be fairly well rated. Praising the voice cast, PC Gamer's Richard Cobbett's placed it as 25 in a similar list. The third Discworld game finally shows its predecessor's fixation with being as much Python as Pratchett. That's an interesting line, and I think I agree on that. The first two games, because they got Eric Idle to voice Rincewind. Eric Idle was just like Rincewind was just being Eric Idle. You could see that a lot more in Discworld too. It was so what's the word? Self-parodying, sacrilegious about everything, jaded in that kind of like Eric Idle humor kind of way. So it is while it's refreshing to move away from that, I actually kind of like it when it's not overdone. So again, it's a sense of humor type thing. Different people find different things funny. There was enough in this game for me to find funny, but but not every line was a hit. And it's interesting that I think that's an interesting comment about it, just like it being less Pythonic, because that is definitely true. Andy Kelly, also writing for PC Gamer, called it one of the 20 best detective games. Kelly commented, "Its shadowy, rain-soaked setting, Ankh-Morpork, is brilliantly atmospheric. It didn't feel like a Discworld thing. No, it didn't feel like a Discworld thing at all. It didn't need to be Discworld. Discworld is tacked on. Discworld is just tacked on to a Lovecraftian horror noir game. There's references, there's bits of humor. The writing, I'm glad that Pratchett had some input on editing the script. But it didn't need to be a Discworld game. It really didn't. But yeah. As I say, the only mechanic that was quintessentially Discworld was the fact that we talk to Death and get some information out of him. Whereas in the first two games, you've got so much that is quintessentially tied to knowing the Discworld, which again is not great design, but ties it in a lot better. Like if it was better telegraphed, like the quantum butterfly thing, then that would have worked a lot better as a puzzle. Discworld 2 kind of moves away from that and just has Discworld integrated into the story, but not really the puzzles. Actually, no. I'll take that back. I take that back. Discworld 2, you need to know a lot about Discworld to be able to beat the puzzles of Discworld 2. You need to know, for example, just the first thing that comes to head is the pyramids. They're better at telegraphing it in the game, but just the sheer fact of pyramids affecting time is such a quintessentially Discworld mechanic. I thought Discworld 1 and Discworld 2 are pretty good. I think, to be fair, I thought this one was pretty good, but it's just a lot less wieldy. And maybe that's just because I was playing on PlayStation, so I was just moving a cursor around with an analog stick. But yeah. Oh yeah. The breaking the fourth wall stuff was that kind of comes back to this comment, you know, that is massively overplaying the Pythonic humor. They're like, I think they got the balance right with Discworld 1. That's a good. It's almost Eric Idle being Eric Idle, and it's clear that they changed some of Rincewind's lines because it's Eric Idle. Number 2 is just Monty Python. It's just a Monty Python game. Number 3 is not even a Discworld game. It's just a Lovecraft game. All right. Sally Rain's setting is brilliantly atmospheric, manages to both mock film noir and be a loving homage to it. And I've not seen much film noir stuff. I've not seen any film noir stuff actually. I'll take that back. But I'm sure it does. Dave Gilbert called Discworld Noir one of his favorite adventure games and called it one of his biggest inspirations. Gilbert would eventually create the Oz Noir adventure game Emerald City Confidential. Nate Burns and Jeff Howard's rough guide to video gaming includes Discworld Noir as one of its recommended games. Noting the heavy number of conversations, they felt the game played more like an interactive novel at times. Completely agree with that. We've already talked about that in length. But praise the dialogue and callback Morpok are beautifully rendered. Again, I think that's probably more true on PC than it is on PlayStation. But yeah, more like an interactive novel at times. This a lot of this, like some bits I agree with, some bits I disagree with. The general consensus, I think, is overall pretty good. Needs more focus on the puzzles. Needs more variety in voice cast. And I never thought I'd say that about Rob Brydon. And overall, you know, fairly solid game. Enjoyable story. Let's go, I don't know. Something out of 10. There we go. I've rated it. Something out of 10.